Hi! In this lesson, we're going to be learning about cymbal positions. So first of all, why is it so important to learn about positions? Well, uniformity is a really key judging criteria in the marching arts. It's also just part of what makes the art form so unique and compelling. So even a horn player on day one is probably going to learn how to hold their horn the same way as their teammate. But with cymbals, this is even more important because these are super shiny, reflective discs. So even slight discrepancies in how you hold the cymbal causes the light to reflect off of it in different ways, making little differences from person to person even more noticeable. Eventually, in later lessons, we're going to talk about using visuals and moving the cymbals in interesting ways to reflect this light. But for now, it's just important to know that positions are going to play a key role as checkpoints of stability and texture in the midst of those visuals. Positions can also signal the tradition and approach of a cymbal line. For example, a lot of West Coast cymbal lines will use more bent, angular elbows to better execute their technique and vibe, whereas East Coast and Midwest cymbal lines will often use longer, softer arm shapes to better execute their technique and vibe. So for these purposes, we're mostly going to be talking about the East Coast and Midwest technique for positions. Before we get into specific positions, I just want to lay some ground rules that will apply to any position that you're in. So anytime you are in Garfield grip, you want to make sure that your fingers are spread. This will allow for optimal control over the instrument. You're also always going to want to make sure that your wrists are in line with your forearm. You don't want them bending up or down. Maybe in the future you might make a position for a visual that might require you to misalign your wrist a little bit, but for these baseline positions that you're going to spend most of your time in, we really want to prioritize your health and comfort and just making sure that you're not putting strain on your wrist. So always keeping it nice and straight in line. The first position we're going to cover is set position. So this is the standard position where you'll hold your cymbals when you're not playing. This should look relaxed and effortless, but not lazy, so there will be some muscle engagement here. Let's just start from like the top to the bottom. So first of all, you want to make sure your shoulders are back and down, looking nice and relaxed. You want to make sure your elbows are slightly bent backwards and also slightly pushed out to the side, just to create some negative space between your torso and your arms. You want to make sure your cymbals are parallel to each other front to back. So use your wrists to make sure that they're not flaring out like this or like this. We want the cymbals to look edge on, meaning when you look at it, you just see two parallel lines. You also want to make sure your cymbals are parallel to each other up and down. So you want to use your fingers to make sure that the cymbals aren't facing out or into your body, just straight up and down. And also the cymbals should be about an inch from either side of your body. So now that we've established set position, we can talk about playing positions. So most instruments have only one playing position. It's not like a flute player like switches to the other side to get different notes. But for cymbals, there are countless ways to hold the cymbals to essentially achieve the same sounds, which is kind of what makes them such a useful and versatile visual tool in an ensemble. But there are two main standard positions where cymbal players will play the standard versions of each sound. And it's really important to get a good handle on these so you and your teammates can have the same approach when you play your sounds. So the first playing position we're going to cover is vertical or high port position. This is a nice strong looking position that looks especially great from the side. So first I want you to just kind of go through the arm and hand positions without putting the cymbals on, just so you can focus on these positions without the weight of the cymbals. So just like at set, you want your shoulders back and down, looking nice and relaxed. You're going to bring your thumbs up to eye level, and your biceps are going to be parallel to the ground, while your forearms are going to be intersecting with them at a 45-degree angle. And since your wrist should always be in line with your forearms, your fingers should not be facing up to the sky. They should be facing out at a 45-degree angle, just like your forearms. So go ahead and return to that position that you just practiced. And you want to make sure your cymbals are about a half an inch apart, so about a drumstick width. And you also want to make sure they're parallel to each other. So they shouldn't be flaring out or anything like this. Make sure they're parallel. And also make sure your upper body isn't leaning back under the weight of the cymbals. If anything, push your weight forward to have a nice strong presence. The second standard playing position is called horizontal. Some people might call it low port, flat, gumption, but here we're going to call it horizontal. This is a great option, especially for performance-heavy environments like indoor drumline where there's no shako, since it doesn't cover your face, so there's no barrier between your performance energy and the audience. Sounds are often also easier at this position since gravity just tends to be a little more on your side. So even though vertical is the more traditional East Coast position, horizontal has kind of become more of the standard for sounds. There are also varying interpretations of this position even in the East Coast tradition. You know, some techs might want the angle a little more shallow, some might want the arms a little closer to your body. So if you have a tech, you should definitely defer to their preferences. But the position we're going to use in this series aligns with our background and is close to the horizontal position that most top East Coast cymbal lines currently use. So just like at vertical, let's go through the horizontal position without the cymbals first, just so we can get used to those arm-hand positions without the weight of the cymbals. So just like always, you want your shoulders back and down. You're going to bring your thumbs up to sternum level, so middle of your chest. And you want your arms just slightly bent. So basically we're maintaining the arm shape we established at set and just bringing it up to your chest level. Your wrists are going to stay in line with your forearms. So in this case, that means your hands will be slightly overlapping. So if your right hand's on top, your left hand's on the bottom. And if we were to make these like our hands in line with each other, we would be bending our wrist and bringing it out of alignment with our forearm. So to keep those wrists in line, you're going to be in a slightly overlapped position. Bring those cymbals up to that position we just established. And here you're going to want to make sure that your cymbals are at a 70-degree angle. So that's basically splitting the difference between straight up and down and 45. We're landing right here in the middle. Your cymbals, again, are 1/2 inch apart, which is like the width of a drumstick. And your cymbals are parallel to each other. So again, we don't want them flaring out, flaring in. Nice and parallel to each other. So the last position we're going to cover is the hip rest position. And this is the most common position that really only serves a visual purpose. It can be used in a lot of basic visual exercises. It can also be a good checkpoint in cymbal visuals and choreography. Like with horizontal, the exact angle and arm shape may vary from cymbal line to cymbal line. So again, just defer to your tech, but we're going to teach what most aligns with our background and what most cymbal lines are doing right now. So again, your arms are going to be slightly bent. You're again just maintaining that arm shape that you established at set, and you're just going to bring the cymbals to a V at your hips. So like the name suggests, the cymbals are at hip level. About like the middle of the cymbal should be hitting at your hips. The cymbals are in a V shape intersecting at a 45-degree angle. And again, the cymbals are edge on, so this means that from the front perspective, someone should only be able to see the edges of the cymbal. So if you thought of like having water in your cymbals, you wouldn't want it to spill out forward or backward. Again, we want a little bit of an arm bend to keep some negative space between our torso and our arms. And this is hip rest. That's the last position we're going to learn today. And these positions will carry you throughout your whole cymbal career.